Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 12 Pro Max and see how this phone holds up in 2024. Now, I will definitely tell you, I'm a massive fan of the iPhone 12s. I've been very critical of them, but I do think they were very good iPhones and I like them a lot. But I will definitely tell you, if you have the options, I think the iPhone 13s were always better, and I think the iPhone 14s are better too, and I'll go and talk about that throughout this video. But if you want to pick up some phones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, on the outside, we basically have a 6.7-inch Super Retina Extra OLED display. Now, a few things you have to remember about this particular phone was that one, you were basically getting a phone that had a bigger size display than its predecessor. So the iPhone 11 Pro Max had that, 6.5-inch display. This one had a 6.7-inch display. So it definitely looked bigger and it was definitely a better looking display. And I definitely do think it's a good looking phone. To be honest, the way this phone was built is still about the same way that all the other iPhones have been built since then. Big display, flat sides. It still looks pretty much the same as something like the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Obviously there's big differences, but the display itself was good. It was great. But the issue with the iPhone 12 Pro Max was that ever since this particular phone's panel, we've pretty much gotten ProMotion displays on every Pro Max since then. There's been 3 different Pro Max iPhones since this iPhone just came out, and all those have ProMotion displays. So that's where this one kind of sits in a weird spot, because why would you want to go and buy this one when you can just go buy something like the 13 Pro Max and get a better display? You know what I mean? So it's kind of a disadvantage for this device. It's not the end of the world or anything, but it's just one of those slight things to kind of keep in mind here. So personally for me, I like the display of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, but every single iPhone since then had a much better display. Now, on the bottom of this thing, we're getting the Lightning port, so no USB-C, but still perfectly fine. Lightning is perfectly okay. You're getting these flat sides like I mentioned before, and it's important because this was basically the first time we got flat sides back on our iPhone since the iPhone 5S, and it was a very good looking phone, right? I like the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I think it still looks great, but that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. Now on the back side of the 12 Pro Max, we're basically getting our frosted glass back. Now this frosted glass back is awesome. It feels very good in the hand. It doesn't feel cheap, and I love having frosted glass backs on my phone because they look and feel so good. You're getting that triple camera setup on the top left as well with that LiDAR sensor, and overall the outside of this phone feels very good. There were a couple of other firsts on this phone too. You were getting the MagSafe capability on the back. So all the iPhone 12s ended up giving us this, frosted glass back with the MagSafe, which is very cool. And I loved having MagSafe with its accessories. But the MagSafe wireless charger broke my iPhone 12 Pro's battery, so I'm not the biggest fan of it. But it's a nice feature to have, and it's kind of, cool to kind of stick some stuff in the back and kind of let it hang there for a little bit. So just one of those things, but it's not a big deal or anything. And on the outside of the 12 Pro Max, that kind of covers it up. I think it's a good looking phone. I think it looks great, but I love how this phone feels, and I still think if you like a big, massive phone, this is a very, very good option, and I'm a big fan of the way this phone is held up from that specific perspective. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, moving on to its camera, I will tell you the camera on this phone, on paper, is a good camera, and it's a good camera, don't get me wrong, but like I said, when compared to the successors, it's not even close. So with the iPhone 12 Pro Max, triple camera setup on the back, 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. And on the front, you're getting that 12 megapixel wide angle lens. Now 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which is nice. But here's the thing. With the iPhone 12 Pro Max camera, this thing, it's a good camera. I don't want to say it's bad. It's a good camera, good enough for the most part. But here's the thing. With something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max camera, you are definitely getting, I would say, a better camera on the 13 Pro Max and every single camera after that than from this one. I will tell you, with the 13 Pro Max compared to the 15 Pro Max, there's a lot of overlap there, and I don't think you need to upgrade to get the way better camera. But definitely from the 12 Pro Max to the 13 Pro Max, there were some really big changes that Apple kind of made within these cameras. And because of that, I felt like the 12 was way more in line with the 11 than the 13 was to the 12, if that makes sense. So I say that to say, with something like the iPhone 12 Pro Max camera, it's still a good camera. You can still take photos and videos and everything like that on it. But I do think the better capability and better quality camera would probably be something like the iPhone 13 series. And if you're in the market, like I mentioned before, that might make a little bit more sense to go and buy a device like that has that type of quality rather than the iPhone, 12 type of quality. So you can still do a lot with this camera. You still have portrait mode. You still have a lot of stuff going on with this lens, which is still very, very nice. But like I said, if you're in the market, you might as well go and go for something like a better camera if you can afford it. And that's why I think something like the iPhone 13 Pro Max is probably the better one when it comes down to it. So that's kind of what I'm saying. I still think the 12's camera is great, but if you have the option, go for the more expensive one. The 13 series, I think, would be a better option for most people out there. Now, I would probably tell you as well from the software side, I do think that iPhone 12 Pro Max is a good software supported phone. So this phone is still going to be here for probably a couple more years to come in terms of software. So it's not going to be outdated tomorrow. It's not going to be outdated the day after. It is still going to be here for a couple of more years, which is very important, which is exactly what you'd probably want. So with the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's still going to be getting iOS 18, and it's probably going to be getting iOS 19 as well. And I wouldn't even be shocked if it was getting iOS 20. iOS 20, I think, is probably going to be a pretty big redesign, and a lot of things are going to be brought within it. So I'm going to be very, very excited to see that when that comes out. Hopefully we're still making videos by then. But I will tell you, with the iPhone, 12 Pro Max, it's a very good software supported phone, and you're not really going to be, missing out on too much from that perspective, which is something that I really, really like when I'm getting a phone like this. So that kind of covers it up from the software side. Now the performance side, this particular phone is basically giving you a couple of things. So it's going to be giving you that Apple A14 Bionic chip inside with 6 gigabytes of RAM. Now the amount of RAM that this phone has inside of it, I think is very good. That is a very good amount of RAM to have inside of a device, especially an iPhone. And I do think that A14 Bionic is very solid as well. I mean, all the iPhone 12s had the same chipset. There was really only 2 generations newer chipset, even though this phone is 3 years old, because the iPhone 13 and 14 share the same chipset. So even though this is the A14 Bionic, we're really only on the A16 Bionic on the iPhone 15s. Now the 15 Pros have a better one, but that's still kind of one thing to kind of keep in mind there. And that's something that I have to kind of remind myself that this phone really isn't that outdated when it comes down to the, performance standpoint. So that's something that's really, really good. And I actually like this phone a lot because of that. So that in and of itself is probably a big thing to keep in mind. If you're playing certain games, this phone is going to kill it. If you're going to play, if you're going to use applications like Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and all those things, iMessage, you're going to be perfectly fine, probably all across the board. So you're not really going to be missing out on it, really anything like I mentioned before, which is something that's very, very important. Now, the thing with the iPhone 12 Pro Max is that the build quality of this phone makes this thing feel amazing, and it's a very fast phone, which is awesome. So from a lot of things across the board, you're really not going to be missing out on too much. And that's something I love about this particular phone, is that the performance is still very good, but it can feel a little bit slower sometimes because you don't really have that promotion display. So it feels a little bit slower here and there, but regardless, I think it's a very good phone anyways. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you is I definitely do think a phone like the iPhone 12 Pro Max is a very good phone. I like this phone a lot. It's still completely worth buying. But like I mentioned, I think you're going to be in a much better spot if you go and buy something like one of the iPhone 13s. You don't have to go and buy the iPhone, 13 Pro Max if you don't want to. But I do think going up to one of those types of devices, even the 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max, those are better iPhones and better phones in general than the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So that's just kind of what happens. That's just kind of what happens when you're getting phones like this. So that's something that I actually prefer a lot from this type of phone. I would just recommend buying the iPhone 13 Pro Max over this one. But if you're on a budget or if there's a reason why you need it, this is still a very good phone as well. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.